Imagine driving 45 miles per hour. In 1904, when horses still had the right of way and the local policeman's whistle could stop both your car and your social life. The Humber 10-12 horsepower twin-cylinder two-seater wasn't just a vehicle, it was a full-blown Edwardian rebellion on 4 wooden wheels. One of the very first British machines that said, "We don't walk to church anymore, we arrive." Ladies and gentlemen, give a warm welcome to the kind of car that requires goggles, courage, and possibly a tetanus shot. Yes, today we dive into the gloriously oily past to discover the Humber 10-12 horsepower twin-cylinder two-seater, a 1904 British motor car that roared into history before most folks even had indoor plumbing. It's the sort of vehicle that reminds us a steering wheel used to be optional, roads were more concept than surface, and a good mustache was worth at least 5 extra horsepower. Before we wind up the crank handle of this Edwardian beast, a quick shout out to our beloved subscribers, especially the sponsor tier legends. Thanks to your support, we can keep tracking down these pre-war marvels and explaining to Timmy once again why gasoline doesn't go in the radiator. Let's rewind the time machine to 1904 Britain. The skies are sootier, the monocle's shinier, and Humber Limited, once a humble bicycle maker, is fast becoming the Rolls-Royce of Nottinghamshire. Having already moved into the booming car trade, Humber had developed a modest twin-cylinder 8.5 horsepower model. But by summer 1904, they were gunning for something more refined. Enter the 10-12 horsepower. Now, Humber didn't just slap a bigger engine into the old frame and call it a day. The new model had a longer 7 feet 6 inches wheelbase, about 228 centimeters, which back then was practically limousine length. It retained the tubular steel frame, a signature Humber choice, but aimed itself squarely at the upper crust of Edwardian motorists, lawyers, doctors, and wealthy mill owners who still shouted, "Make way!" to passing horses. The car was launched during the golden dawn of motoring, when owning a car wasn't just about going places. It was about being seen going there. Humber's 10-12 was no cheap runabout either. Advertisements from 1905 listed the two-seater at £235 sterling, which could buy you a decent middle-class home. The 10-12 may have been luxurious, but it was never mass-produced. Few were built before Humber pivoted to 4-cylinder engines around 1906. The result? Survivors today are rarer than a polite online comment section. Chassis number 3047 is one of the oldest known examples and, brace yourselves, still runs. It's eligible for the famous London-Brighton Veteran Car Run, which is like the Olympics for cars that predate sliced bread. Let's lift the bonnet, shall we? Underneath sat a modest yet brave twin-cylinder engine mounted at the front. It produced, as the name suggests, somewhere between 10 and 12 brake horsepower at a whopping 1,000 revolutions per minute. That's not much by today's standards, but back in 1904, it was enough to terrify pedestrians, spook horses, and thrill moustached gentlemen. The transmission was a 3-speed manual, sending power through a bevel gear shaft drive to the rear wheels. No chains, no nonsense. Suspension was handled by semi-elliptic leaf springs at both ends, and braking, well, don't expect modern disc brakes. Humber gave you a transmission brake and rear-wheel drums. Mechanically, the car wasn't radical, but it was sound. Humber believed in robust engineering over fancy gimmicks, and it shows. Reviewers called it a grand car for all-round work, which back then meant it could climb hills, start in winter, and not explode on Sundays. Not bad for a machine assembled under open skies. Literally. The factory demand was so high in 1905 that some Humber chassis were built outdoors. Talk about a convertible from birth. Now, if you're wondering how many are left today, the answer is barely a handful. Chassis 3047 is the poster child, fully operational and sporting a 2-seat body, rebodied after the war, which was common at the time. It even carries its original 1904 registration plate, and it's been piloted through the London-Brighton Run, as well as various veteran car club events. The car has lived through Edward VII, 2 world wars, and at least 1 episode of Timmy trying to use WD-40 as hair gel. Inside, Spartan doesn't begin to describe it. Wooden floorboards, leather bench seating, a few brass levers, and a speedometer if you were feeling fancy. You drove with your arms wide like you were landing a plane, and if it rained, well, congratulations, you were now bathing. But even with its minimalism, the craftsmanship was there. Fine joinery, forged fittings, and paint that glowed like it had been brushed on by elves. The two-seater layout on chassis 3047, though not original, is faithful to the era and gives the car an elegant, roadster-like presence. Think of it as the Jaguar E-Type's great-great-grandfather who wore a monocle and never swore. Market-wise, the Humber was competitively priced at the time. £235 sterling for the two-seater and £250 sterling for the four-seater. That was steep for the average citizen, equivalent today to around $30,000 to $35,000 or €27,000 to €32,000, but a fair deal for a well-built touring car. Modern collectors, however, see the Humber 1012 as a rare prize. The surviving examples are museum grade, and their prices reflect that. While no exact auction record exists for a twin-cylinder 1904 model, a 1906 Humber 1012 Tourer fetched £22,900 sterling. At Christie's in 2005, about $40,000. More recently, R.M. Sotheby's placed a price estimate of £80,000 sterling to £140,000 sterling for chassis 212 in an upcoming 2025 sale. And now a little love letter to this iron and brass trailblazer. The Humber 1012 horsepower twin-cylinder two-seater isn't just a relic, it's a running, breathing tribute to a time when men wore driving gloves unironically and every journey was an adventure. It represents a moment when British engineering was stepping out of the bicycle shop and into the future, quietly, gracefully, and with just enough horsepower to outrun a horse. So here's to the 1012, a humble hero in a top hat, still chugging along more than a century later. A heartfelt thank you to our channel sponsors. Without your monthly support, this show would be me talking to Timmy in a garage about the time he mistook radiator coolant for mouthwash. He said it had a minty bite. Your support lets us share these marvels of history, one brass headlamp at a time. And for those watching at home, whether you're restoring a 1904 motor car or just trying to get your microwave clock to stop blinking, don't forget to like, subscribe, and tell your snobbiest neighbor that brass is back. See you next time, and keep your spark plugs dry.